Welcome to the Remodeler Success Podcast, a show created to inspire kitchen and bath industry professionals to achieve optimal success in their remodeling business. Your host, Dennis Oz, is the author of the book, Remodel Your Digital Marketing, an integrated online marketing guide for kitchen and bath remodelers. He's also the founder of RTA Marketing, a pioneer digital marketing agency for the remodeling industry. On each episode, Dennis will sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they learned, and how to find success in remodeling.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Remodeler Success Podcast, where we share the real stories and strategies from successful remodeling and construction businesses. Today's guest is an incredible leader with the decades of proven results. So that's why I'm so excited today. Well, just to give you a little bit of context about him, he's been running a company that's been going strong for 37 years. Yes, it's almost like 4 decades, and they're delivering high quality results with the residential remodels across whole Santa Clara Valley in California. And he learned the trade from the family. So it's just like a family business, starting working in the field from 1970s, folks. I'm talking about real experience here, and creating a reputation for full service remodeling, from like whole home transformations to kitchens and baths and everything that you can talk about. We can even talk about aging in place. And I would also like to mention being a universal design certified remodeler. We will be bringing a lot of knowledge and expertise to the table for today's session. Please welcome Greg May, the president and owner of May Construction. Greg, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Dennis. Didn't realize I was quite that old until you start bringing up how long I've been doing this. But I've been doing this a long time. Did it with my dad probably from about 6 years old. He was always buying fixer-uppers and then just stayed in the business. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I can imagine. Greg, let me ask you this really pretty straightforward. It's been 4 decades in the business, and I'm sure that you've witnessed a lot of economic shifts, and the economy just changed. Maybe trends are changing, and even the customer expectations are evolving. What's been the biggest constant in your approach to running your company through it all?
Boy, my dad started the business in the late 70s, was buying homes, fixing them up, selling them. And then the economy kind of crashed in the late 70s. And so he moved into doing construction on small projects, and then it kind of grew from there. But he was always pounding it into me, do it right, treat the customer right, treat the project right. I've always said he's probably got the highest morals of anybody I've ever known. And he just kind of constantly like, this is the way you do it. This is the way you do it. You treat the client right. And he stayed in the business until about 95. And since then, I've come to realize that everything matters. It's the client, it's the project, but it's all the little things that happen around that too. It's, how do you treat your employees, your subcontractors? We probably spoil our subcontractors to a point, but in return, if I ever have an emergency or we put a nail through a water pipe or something like that, I can pick up the phone and the plumber will almost always drop what he's doing to come out and do something for us. So we've built those relationships over the years too. A lot of people burn bridges, blow up relationships. We've always tried to cultivate and improve relationships with everybody that surrounds us. If everybody that around us is happy, then it just makes our job that much easier too. And maybe don't make as much money, from day in, day out, but in the long run, everything runs smoother, less stress, and it's just good for everybody, including the clients.
This is very important. I can see that because, the client perspective is something very important that you have to take into consideration when we are running our businesses, for sure. Just would like to talk about your sales process. And in 2025, selling remodeling projects today just means more than just giving a quote, or it's, there are budgets there, like client expectations is another part of it. And also there should be an alignment there as well. So how do you structure your sales process to keep clients really committed and projects also profitable?
So, a lot of the industry experts, so to speak, will tell you, oh, you got to go out and get 3 bids for every project. And I always compare that. I always talk to clients and I always compare it to purchasing a car. If I said, Dennis, can you go buy me a car? Or how much for a new car, Dennis? Okay.
Yeah, it's
20,000 or 200,000, right?
right.
But, they all have 4 tires, they all have a steering wheel. But do you want something with performance? Do you want something that gets better gas mileage, leather interior? There's all kinds of options available. So even if somebody comes to me with a set of blueprints, there's still a million decisions that need to be made. So we have, so you hear this competitive bid process. I can easily write a contract for a $500,000 job and the bottom line says 400,000. Anybody could do it. But if you work through all the details with the client, find out exactly the products they want, what are the pains, what are the issues that we're trying to solve for them, our family members moving in, what's life going to be like for them in 5 years or 10 years. And so we can tweak the project a little bit here and there to make sure we're meeting all those expectations for them. What exact products do they want? Plumbing fixtures, you can get $100 faucet or you can get $1,000 faucet. Tile, flooring, even the type of paint job you want, type of trim you want. They're all potentially big numbers. So we like to work through all of those details with the clients. Do we need some sketches of what the tile layout's going to be? So I'm getting an accurate estimate from my tile guy. So it does multiple things. We call it a cooperative bid process where the client and us and maybe the designer, some vendors, subcontractors even will bring in at times to tweak design, like HVAC systems. Architects will lay out an HVAC system, but maybe they didn't really talk with the homeowner about what their needs are. So we'll bring our HVAC guy out and he'll talk with them. And almost always that gets tweaked a little bit to fit their needs. So in the end, you've worked through all these details. You've got exact numbers for the plumbing fixtures, the tile, the floor, the cabinets, everything. What do you want in your cabinets, all that stuff. So then we can get exact numbers. The client gets to go see and touch and feel and make the decisions on all those little bells and whistles. Then those exact products get put into the estimate with the exact number, the subcontractors that might be affected by, here's a good one. So years ago, we did an estimate for a client and I didn't have the plumbing fixture information. Got a quote from my plumber, gives me a quote to do the project. Well, then it's time for the plumber to show up. He shows up and we pull out all the boxes for the shower control system. I had 2 shower heads, I had multiple valves, all these bells and whistles. Greg, this is going to take me about a day longer than what I was expected. This is, I need another, I forgot what he said, $800 or something like that for a couple of guys. And it was like, well, now what do I do? Do I go back to the homeowner and say, I got a big change order? Do I eat it? And so that after that, I was like, okay, for now on, not only are we going to get the client to make those decisions up front, but we're going to send it to the subcontractors when they're actually providing the estimating. So nobody can come back to me and say, hey, I didn't know I'm installing this, or the tile guy can't say, I didn't know there's a liner with diagonal set. All that gets sent out during the bid process. So it's a very accurate estimate. So when we start our final bid process, we make sure we've got all the information. Sometimes you're missing a little bit something here and there, and you'll include an allowance for the work. But in general, I like to work through all the options with the client. And even, here's another good one too. So options for the client. There's sometimes you can frame something a little bit different and save thousands of dollars. Sometimes we have a project I just looked at about 2 weeks ago, and it's for an ADU. And getting the sewer, water, and electrical out to this thing is going to be potentially a nightmare. Might even have to go under a road. Could be over $100,000 to do this. So the architecture's all done, but the architect hasn't checked to see what it's going to take to get the sewer, water, electrical. Maybe they said they want gas lines out there too. So I started looking around. I'm thinking, okay, before I even start the bid process, I'm going to bring the plumber out, see what it's going to take to get to a sewer line. Can we do it without going under the road? Can we get electrical from the electrical company in without going under the road. Same thing with water. And so this is potentially $100,000 plus item that if you didn't research it up front, somebody just bid off the drawings, you could be into the project day 3 and go, oh, wait a minute. We got to cut a hole through the street and we need, all these other safety devices and stuff for traffic control and all that. I need another, $125,000 before we can even think about moving ahead with your project. So we try and go through that whole process too, and offer options and look for opportunities to save money. So.
Wow. Well, this is very interesting because this is, folks, I think you hear it from experience when Greg just really explains that. Greg, there's a really kind of like a story that I learned. They're asking a painter to paint a picture, and he just paints it in 2 minutes. And he says, oh my God, how did you do this in 2 minutes? He said, it's not 2 minutes, it's 40 years plus 2 minutes. I think that's what you said over there. Just saving thousands of dollars with some of the projects. This all happens with the experience, folks. When you have a team also, we're going to talk about team management today. I have some questions for Greg to answer about team management. But yeah, the experience is just where the real magic happens. And I think you learned a lot from Greg answers today. So thank you so much for this one. Greg, yes, let's talk about the team management, because once the sale is made, you have this amazing process. And once the sale is made, everything really hinges on your team, your subs, your vendors, and your staff. They have to execute. Just want to ask you, what have you learned about leading and managing teams that actually deliver on high expectations?
Well, that's a lot. Learned a lot over the years, and I think that's one of the most important things in a successful business that's going to grow. You have to commit to constantly learning and creating a culture where everybody's willing to get uncomfortable and kind of what's the next step, not just for me, but my employees, the business. So I remember my wife used to work for a big financial firm, and she had a manager that would say, you always give your employees whatever they need, the tools, the information, the whatever. And that really stuck with me. So when we do, so we've sold the job, let's say we've got the contract signed, we've got all these estimates from subcontractors and vendors and everything. All that gets organized into a process that the field guys can have access to. We usually use Dropbox usually. But we also train, we build processes, and the processes aren't just something that I have built. There's an idea, somebody has something happened, or there's an idea, and then we all sit down and work together. The billing department talks with the production department, and I sit in on it. What works best for you? What works best for you? Well, I'd like this. Well, that doesn't work for me. Well, let's find something in the middle that's going to work best for the company. And then making sure that that process has steps that everybody can follow. And if you're the third person in that, if you're the one that has to take the third step, who was supposed to take the second step, and they've done it properly, and the first step was done properly. So then the people in the field that are actually producing, they're confident in the information they have. They can access the information and have that they need. They have been trained to do whatever they're supposed to do, and we make sure that they're comfortable doing it. And I've always tried to push people. I like to know what people's limitations are, where their comfort zones are. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and we talk about this all the time here. Some people are really good at certain things, and some people are not good at it. So how can we offset that, or at least be aware, okay, this person isn't good at taking notes, maybe, so we don't put them in a position where they're having important conversations with the client, but maybe they're good on the phone and meeting subcontractors. So we might bounce them around. Okay, plumber's showing up. Here's the paperwork. Make sure it's getting done. So it's recognizing people's strengths and weaknesses as well. The goal for us, we talked a little about cooperative bidding and what that allows us to do. I have a saying called I'd like a project to be so organized that has the best chance of success. And I always say the best chance of success. Ideally, once a project is signed and it's organized and we actually start, I always tell the clients, you could go off to Timbuktu for 2 months and we'll be able to run your project. We'll get on the phone with you, maybe a Zoom call, but we've got everything laid out. We've got the roadmap. We've got all the products they've been ordered. We had a client, man, it's probably been 15 years ago before Zoom, where we did that with them, had a whole booklet for the project. They were living in Florida and we're out here in Santa Clara, Silicon Valley area. We did the whole project without them seeing the house. We would take pictures, email them the pictures and things what we were going to talk about, and we'd have our weekly meeting and go over things with them. That was probably the smoothest project I ever had, because the client had already worked through everything and wasn't, second guessing things. But it's just it's making sure you're real organized and your people all understand what their step is and the next step that they have to prepare for, and the step after that.
This is amazing to know. Thank you so much for sharing these golden nuggets with us, Greg. I just want to take the conversation to a little more in that, I would say, common saying, being in the business or being on the business. So because as remodelers, we often struggle to really scale, because sometimes we're really stuck in the business, because we would like to deliver the actual work instead of managing the teams.
Mm-hmm.
When did you really shift from being the guy in the field to leading through business and also team?
Boy, I had a good friend, or have a good friend, that has a huge framing company, and we used to golf together, and he'd give me some advice. He said, you got to read this book. And this is 25 years ago, maybe. So I bought the book, and my wife was looking at it, and she said, well, why don't you buy 2 of them and I'll look at it too. So we go on vacation to Mexico. So here I am in Mexico with my wife. Should be sitting at the swim-up bar. And we did sit at the swim-up bar for a while, but we both had this book. So we spent this whole, I can't remember, it was a week or 2 weeks. We spent the whole vacation going through this book. We had fun too, but we spent a lot of time going through this book, making notes. It was all about building systems and processes. And even going back before that, probably close to 30 years ago, I was trying to do everything. I was out in the field still, and then I was trying to sell the jobs and do the books and do payroll and everything else. And my wife had a pretty good job, and we made it kind of a leap of faith. She quits her job, comes to work for the company, and I think day one she found probably 3 mistakes that I'd made in the books that saved me about $1,000. People hadn't paid, or you missed this or something, like missed this billing. So it's kind of like, all right, somebody's telling us this is a good idea. So very quickly I realized, okay, now this whole part of I was doing all this stuff, and now she's taking on this stuff. And so it allowed me to take on some more important things. So it was kind of an eye opener. Shortly after that, I hired my first business coach, and he was always pushing me, you don't have to be the guy that answers all the questions. And there's a couple good books on that. Instead of answering questions, you ask more questions. And most people, if they're already working in a particular part of the business, they probably have the answer, or maybe with just a couple of nudges here and there, they probably can figure it out. So instead of keep constantly answering, I kept asking questions, and it was amazing how fast, I was getting 10 to 20 calls a day with sometimes silly questions, to within a month, it was down to 3 calls a day. And within 6 months, these people that were now running jobs were so confident in things. Sometimes they would just call me every other day and say, hey, oh yeah, we had this problem. This is what I did for it. That's a good idea. And then encouraging your people too, making them feel good about taking on the responsibilities, making sure they're trained, of course, and making sure they understand if you ever get stuck or have a question, give me a call. But, you pretty much know what you're doing out there, and go for it if you're confident in what needs to be done. So that was there's a lot of stuff there, but tell you, just making that commitment to, first step is take the little things that are easy to hand off to people. And then once you get that off your plate, maybe that gives you an hour a week of free time. Now you take that hour of free time, you train up the next level of stuff. Maybe you just took 2 more hours off your week. And you just keep building up that ladder. So all of a sudden, this bandwidth that you have is moving up into more important things, running the business instead of the business running you down there on the bottom. So it's kind of a long explanation, but
That was amazing. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that everybody else is here, Greg, is enjoying your answers as much as I do. And thanks so much for sharing all these nuggets. Well, folks, I have more questions for Greg. I'm not letting him go. So don't worry about it, because I would like to talk about AI, and we will also talk about marketing. So just stick with us, just bear with us, please. So let's take the conversation to AI talk. Well, transformation right now. Even the GPT-5 has just been released a couple of days ago. AI is really transforming everything from like the design to client communication and also marketing. People use it for automation sometimes. Everybody using it differently. And just want to ask you, are you using AI in your business right now? And if so, what's the biggest impact there? How do you use it?
yeah, we don't use it too much yet, but it's moving so fast. We have a company that helps write our blogs, and they use AI quite a bit. And they'll write up something, and then they send it to me, and then I, proofread it, add, delete, and things like that, and fine tune it, and it goes in. So that does save some time there. I've had a couple of clients that are, real techies. I'm not a techie. I mean, I know how to send emails. I know Excel and Word, and and I can use my Apple phone and say, take me to this location. But I have, in Silicon Valley here, everybody's talking AI. All my good friends are techies and talking AI. And I've had some clients that have done some pictures of what they want it to look like using AI. And there's some benefits to it. I've seen some, some odd things too, but I can definitely see it adding to what we do. I've got some young people here that are probably going to be the ones that drag me kicking and screaming into the new stuff. It might be one of my grandchildren. I don't know.
Because the young generation is just, they're so lucky. And I was watching Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI. He was saying, I wish I would be the guy who's just graduating from college, because I have amazing tools under my command that I can ask and get everything. I was just thinking about this, Greg, because we all like in university. I was just going to the lectures and learning from the professor. I had no chance to talk about like some other like person that's like, you have to pay someone to be able to learn a lot more about like the university courses that you are studying at that moment given time. Well, right now there are tools even like for the students and for your grandkids and our childs, right? It's amazing times. But yeah, do you say if you have younger generation they'll find a way to use it? That's what you say?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. One of my grandsons is 13. I remember him at like 1 or 2 years old. My daughter gave him an iPad, and I just, he grew up going, it just, it's just light years ahead of where I was, and even my own kids. It's just amazing what they're learning. And now AI, I have some really good friends I golf with. They're all techies, and we're sitting around afterwards having a beer after a round of golf, and they're, AI is probably the number one topic of conversation right now. 2 or 3 of them are retired and doing consulting work, and it's a big deal. Last year was self-driving cars that they were all talking about. Now it's AI.
Yeah. Well, pretty amazing to see this transformation. And it's really great to learn these amazing things from you as the business owner, how it reacts and what are the use cases, those kind of things. And thanks so much for sharing with us. Well, let's talk about a little bit of marketing because, well, Greg, with all these years in the business, I'm sure that you've seen all. You probably tried print, digital, even some, I'm sure that maybe you have some referral marketing. Just want to ask you, like, 2 questions. What is the best marketing channel right now that you feel like bringing you the best qualified leads? And what is the biggest headache today?
So we don't do a lot of marketing. We all of our business is word of mouth. Now we do, before we start a job, we do a mailer to the nearby neighbors. If you have any problems, traffic, any issues, please call us. And that started out as if a neighbor's upset about something, we want them calling us, not going to our client saying, hey, your guy parked in my driveway or something like that. We'd rather get the information up, ourselves and deal with it. And then at the end, we send another letter out saying, thank you for, or thank you for putting up with us, basically. So there's some marketing with that. We do occasionally, my wife there's a couple of magazines around here that'll do a 2-page spread. And so she does the pictures and everything. We make sure we get our referrals, ask people to post on Google and Houzz and things like that. But we're not, you're never going to hear us on the radio or TV. And I've had people say, oh, you got to put a sign up at my kid's Little League, thing. So we're somewhat picky about the clients we take. They have to fit into our processes and systems. If somebody wants the absolute cheapest job, like I said before, I can write a $500,000 job and put $400,000 on the bottom line. At the end of the day, it's going to be a $500,000 job, or the expectations aren't going to be met. So you got to make sure that there's clients that understand that and are willing to go through that process. So I would say, maybe the biggest headache is sometimes you're working with one of these magazine guys and they aren't getting things put in the right spot, but I don't deal with that. I'm not, that's just not my forte. I talked about weaknesses and strengths, and that's definitely not one of my strengths. English was not my best subject in school. I was a math and science guy growing up. So I kind of let Debbie, my wife, deal with that, and Donna here in the office deal with that stuff. So, and like I said, we're not a big marketing firm. We have been pretty blessed to have, great referrals and great clients.
Sometimes, because when you were in the market for many, many years, the phenomenal delivery that you give to the community, of course, it's going to bring you folks some natural leads that you don't need to put your name on the TV or spend thousands of dollars to radio ads or something like that. You just need to be there when they ask you. And just like Greg said, sometimes this decades of experience and also like the legacy will bring you clients on autopilot, because there are some happy people. Of course, all our listeners know here that the importance of the word of mouth marketing here is also a good marketing, because you do value your referrals. Correct? That's what I'm seeing here. That's what you do when you have years and years and years of experience. It's obviously, we can see that the amount of the marketing budget that you have really shrinks with the years that you have gained experience. So that's an amazing, I would say, one of the key points from your answers. And thank you so much for sharing this one with us. Well, Greg, just want to ask you maybe one last question today, then we're going to be wrapping up. I would like to talk about the mindset and the mindset shift that's happening, all these entrepreneurs and all these remodelers out there, all these construction company owners out there. Sometimes especially when starting out, we focus on the craft, but not the business.
Right.
And I would like to ask you that one mindset shift or piece of advice you wish every remodeler would adapt early on. What is that?
That's a good question. So almost everybody that goes into the trades went into it because they knew how to build a house, or a plumber could do pipes. I was real lucky with my dad. When I was younger, we did everything, and we poured concrete, framed it, did the electrical, did the plumbing, the drywall, we painted, we did the roof. I mean, we did everything. So the advantage there is that I understand a lot about construction that maybe a general carpenter or plumber, electrician probably doesn't know. But it's usually, especially in the trades, and even if you're working at McDonald's and you work your way up to manager, you probably got there because you worked hard and you could do these things and get a lot done. But it was you getting it done. When you own a business, you only have so much bandwidth. There's only so many hours in a week. You can only do so much. So at some point you have to have a mind shift from I'm a doer to I'm somebody that makes sure that things are getting done. And how do I get those things done? So if I only have 40 hours a week, if I'm a doer, I'm only going to get 40 hours worth of work done. But if I'm somebody that's looking at it like, how do I get 200 hours of work done? Okay, I got to hire a plumber, I got to hire an electrician, I got to hire a foreman, I got to this, I got to that, got to build some processes and systems. You look at Tim Cook of Apple. I mean, multi-billion dollar. I think their cap is over $1 trillion now. If he was trying to do everything, the guy'd be building one Apple phone at a time. Probably every month he might be spitting out a phone. But they got all these different products all over the world, and it's all these layers of leadership and training and production lines. And in my business, obviously a lot smaller scale, but you still have to have that mindset that I need to get it done, and then the next step up is I have to have people underneath me that I'm training to make sure it gets done and not be doers anymore. And John C. Maxwell has a great book called The 5 Levels of Leadership. And it's kind of that first step is, congratulations, you own a business, or congratulations, you work at McDonald's and you're now the shift manager, but you don't have any experience, right? You have to learn to be a leader. The next step is you have to learn to train leaders underneath you. And then the next step is those leaders have to be trained the next layer down, and then inside there, you have the processes and systems that you trust, and you continually fine tune. You have to be continually fine tuning. And then on top of training, you're encouraging your people and patting them on the back when things go well. And when they don't go well, and this is important too, everybody makes mistakes. And I always tell my people, you're going to make mistakes. We all do. Please tell me when you do, especially if it's something on a job site that, we need to fix. I always say, somebody once told me the most dangerous employee is the one that hides their mistakes. I mean, the most embarrassing thing that could happen to me as a client calls me up and says, I got home and there's a big scratch in my brand new hardwood floor. Oh man, now I'm running around. Does a client think we're trying to hide it or something? But the client, I actually had an employee years ago that scratched the floor, and he immediately came over to me and said, Greg, I put this big scratch in the floor. And I was right in a big doorway. He's like, oh man, all right, now thanks for letting me know. And we immediately called the floor guy. He came out the next day, but I called the client and said, hey, just a heads up. This is what happened. We're already taking care of it. And the client relaxed. They weren't happy about it, but they knew that we're already taking care of it. So that's kind of a long answer to things. But in a nutshell, I would say the mindset has to change from doing everything, physically swinging a hammer, trying to do your books, to getting it done, hiring somebody to do the books, training people to lead and manage, finding good subcontractors that you can trust that will follow your systems and have the same commitment to making the clients happy that we do.
Wow, that was an amazing session today with you, Greg, and thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough for sharing all these wisdom and your experience that you are bringing from industry to our listeners today. That was amazing. If someone has maybe a follow-up question in the future, we are, of course, it's a B2B show, but sometimes some homeowners also come across with our show. If they are living closer to you, or what is the best way to get back to you? Is that your website, or what's the best way?
Yeah, if you want to go to our website, it's a long name. It's May constructioninc.com. So you got to remember that INC, mayconstructioninc.com. Otherwise, I think you get some guy in South Carolina or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have some good resources on there as well. It's information about the company, information on our processes, our design process. It's fairly detailed. And we got some nice pictures on there too. So.
Great. Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for everything that you shared today. I am sure our listeners get the real value from today's session. And well, folks, that was another episode of Remodeling Success Podcast. We're going to see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.
If you would like to generate more leads, please visit rtamarketing.com to get a copy of the book, Remodel Your Digital Marketing, an integrated online marketing guide for kitchen and bath remodelers. This has been another episode of the Remodeler Success Podcast. Thanks for listening.